MSNBC totally busted here. There's a $30 million defamation lawsuit filed against the network. And the reason it was filed against the network is because they went out and called a doctor, an individual who was apparently treating some of the migrants that were coming into a Georgia facility, including women. They were calling him a uterus robber. Apparently he had performed a couple, I believe his lawyer says 2 hysterectomies that were needed on people that were there. And suddenly, according to Rachel Maddow, now he's doing all kinds of weird stuff. Here's her on with a guest talking about this very story. Lawyers allege abuse of migrant women by a gynecologist for Georgia ICE detention center. She's interviewing not the doctor there, but somebody, gosh, who looks a little bit like her. Why is it that everybody on MSNBC kind of looks like Rachel? She's like cloning herself, right? Anyway, the lawyer came out and cited her as one of the big problems in this case. But let's go back in time to September of 2020. Here's Chris Hayes, who also picked up on this story. Let's listen to what he was saying.
Tonight, we can report there are 3 women who say they had procedures they either did not consent to ahead of time or felt coerced into consenting to. Tonight, we could bring you part of an exclusive interview with one of those women detained at that very facility who says she felt pressured into a full abdominal hysterectomy by this doctor. The woman is in immigration proceedings and fears for her status, so we are calling her B and not showing her face. She was in the Irwin County Detention Center during the Trump administration. We've reviewed medical records that corroborate that she had this procedure. She went to this doctor, who NBC News has identified as Dr. Mahendra Amin, an OBGYN in nearby Douglas, Georgia. Now, we are aware of the whistleblower's allegations as they relate to Dr. Amin, and Dr. Amin has issued a statement saying we are aware of the whistleblower's statements as they relate to Dr. Amin, and he vehemently denies them. We look forward to all of the facts coming out and are confident that once they do, Dr. Amin will be cleared of any wrongdoing. Here is how B described her experience with that doctor at the facility.
I felt like I had no right to say anything. Dr. Amin just told me, listen, you're going to get hysterectomy done and schedule an appointment for that. And so then, I had no say in this.
And then you did go and he did perform a full hysterectomy on you. He said to remove
yes.
the cancerous tissue.
Yes, that's what I was told.
Like maybe he actually saved her life, right? You saw how they put his picture up, and well, the whole uterus robbery started on Twitter, etc. And there were lots of allegations made. Now, this guy's an individual citizen, and he's trying to defend himself in all of this. It turns out that the whole thing was bogus, and the judge had decided that because it was all bogus, it could in fact go to trial. So it could have been much more than $30 million in defamation that they would have been wound up in terms of needing to settle and pay. So granted, they took their get out of jail free card. But just to go back to what was being alleged, and how this relates, by the way, I'm going to get into Smartmatic and Fox, because in this case, they're believing this whistleblower who's a nurse. And, I don't know, what do you on the one hand, there's got to be space for whistleblowers. But on the other hand, what is it? Anybody can say anything. You can just go out and libel somebody. In this case, an attorney who's being accused of stealing women's uteruses. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? You don't want to run with a story like that unless you're really, really solid on your facts. But Rachel ran it. You had Chris running it like you just saw. And then that other woman that's on at 4:00 that always looks so miserable running it. Here, take a listen to this interview with the so-called whistleblower, a woman named Dawn Wooten.
In the complaint, a hearing from women who are detained there, talking about a specific doctor performing hysterectomies, referring to him as a uterus collector. Tell us about how you heard about this doctor and what women said about their experiences with him.
You have detained women. I had several detained women on numerous occasions that would come to me and say, Miss Wooten, I had a hysterectomy. Why? I had no answers as to why they had those procedures. And one lady walked up to me here this last time around between October of 19 until July the 2nd. And she said, what is he? Is he the uterus collector? Does he collect uteruses? And I asked her, what does she mean? And she says, everybody that I talk to has had a hysterectomy. And you just don't know what to say. I mean, I don't have a answer for why that they would come to me and they would say, is he the uterus collector?
How would you describe the standard of care, the general sort of medical environment in which these migrants were detained?
The standard of care wasn't timely all the time. They would have a procedure to where they would fill out forms to be seen. Those forms would be shredded. They would be told in area instances that, there's nothing going on with them, just on numerous occasions. And as a human, you just don't treat people inhumane. I have a title as a licensed practical nurse, and I protect my title with dignity, to where I was raised by you treat people as you want to be treated. The sanitation, especially during COVID, the sanitation was horrible.
So you see where this is going, right? So they've got the whistleblower who comes on and makes all these allegations. How much information she had, it's not really clear. But again, the onus is sort of on the reporter, right? To make sure that story is pretty buttoned up before you just run wild with it, because it is somebody's reputation. But in this case, because it was Donald Trump's ICE, right, agenda that may have been going out and sealing uteruses from migrants' wombs. Well, it was just too good for Rachel and Chris and the other one to resist. Here's a look at the other one, the blondie.
Julia, can you widen the lens on the medical care that is standard for female detainees? It just sounds like a whole lot of gynecological care when we read about the complete and abject neglect around COVID.
Yeah, you're hitting it. These are the conversations I've been having all day, Nicole. I mean, I've been talking to lawyers who say, look, I have clients in detention who have diabetes and couldn't get their medication, yet they were told to go back for a pap smear and then to go again when that seemed irregular. It seems like they were getting way too much care from a gynecologist and perhaps doing very unnecessary procedures and not enough of what you would need in a short-term detention situation. We know that they aren't supposed to stay longer than 6 months. Why were they getting so much care on this one area? And I will also point out that this doctor was part of a civil settlement with the Justice Department in 2015, where he and other doctors had to pay over $500,000 and a fine for fraudulent claims to Medicaid. So that means that we're already looking at a doctor who has at least been, alleged to have tried to inflate his claims in order to get more money. And that, I think, is the allegation here. Why was he doing so much work if, as it seems, a lot of these procedures were not necessary? And I should also mention, very tragic, one of the lawyers described a woman of childbearing age who has now had a hysterectomy that perhaps she did not need.
Yeah, or perhaps she did need, and maybe it actually saved her life. But God forbid we actually think about that, because, hey, we're MSNBC, and this is Donald Trump's ICE people going after migrants, and that's just too good a story for us to resist. Listen, in this case, the judge actually made the decision that MSNBC had hosts on, meaning Rachel and the 4 o'clock. She's on in the afternoon. Help me. She used to be a Republican. Nicole Wallace. Okay. So that one and Chris Hayes, they were all out there making what the judge said was, quote, verifiably false statements about Dr. Amin, including claims of mass hysterectomies leading to the cancellation of the scheduled trial. Okay, so I don't think MSNBC really wanted this thing to come to trial, because it would have then shown that they had a whole bunch of fake news anchors there. Stacey Evans was the attorney that was representing none other than Dr. Amin, and she was the one that filed the suit for $30 million against NBC Universal over MSNBC's coverage of her client, that Georgia doctor. And apparently she's a Democrat. And she was blown away by what these people did, specifically Rachel Maddow. So this is, you see on the left, Stacey Evans, who is a Democrat, who was just astonished by the falsehoods that were being told on one MSNBC, specifically by somebody that she used to watch, Rachel Maddow. Here we go. I'll read this to you. This is in Town Hall, in a rare rebuke from within her own political ranks. You had Democrat attorney Stacey Evans slamming MSNBC's coverage of her client, the Georgia gynecologist, Dr. Amin, calling the network's host Rachel Maddow's reporting on the so-called, quote, uterus collector case preposterous, quote, and disappointing. Evans, who says she regularly tunes into the left-leaning network, spoke out to NBC Universal, and she agreed there to the $30 million settlement with Dr. Amin, whose reputation was dragged through the mud following widely circulated and now discredited claims that he performed unnecessary hysterectomies on ICE detainees. I mean, what a thing to say about somebody, right? This is pretty bad stuff. So this is a network which I think we have seen over and over again rewards sensationalism. In fact, I don't need to say this. This is what the lawyer is saying. The lawyer for Dr. Amin said that, this is pretty obviously disappointing to think that any media outlet could be so reckless as to, quote, have a classic example of chasing sensationalism over facts. Well, I think that we all know pretty darn well that is a specialty, shall we say, of MSNBCs. It seems like they're always chasing sensationalism. I mean, that is what this network has been about. And we're still seeing it today in so many different ways. But in this case, it is an individual, so it makes it especially hurtful. You get those three anchors, three of them right there. We are pleased that Dr. Amin is able to move forward from his years-long litigation, said his attorney, Stacey Evans. I mean, years long. This has been going on since September 2020 when they were first making these statements. Quote, it is unfortunate that he had to get sued, that they had to sue to get confirmation of what we knew all along, that he did not perform mass hysterectomies on women detained at Irwin County Detention Center. We are glad that the judge found those statements false as a matter of law because, in fact, Dr. Amin performed only 2 hysterectomies, both of which were medically necessary and consented to by the patients. So he's out there trying to do a good thing, trying to help people. But, the way MSNBC twists all of this, it's somehow Trump trying to rob migrant women of their uteruses. Okay, that's where we are today, guys. And you know what? Good. I hope that, they should have paid more. They should pay through the nose because when you are just so blatantly false and misleading, it is dangerous to public psychology, right? Because then people are like, oh my gosh, Donald Trump's ICE department is putting in doctors to take these uteruses out of people. So everybody's like, oh my gosh. So that's frankly, that in and of itself, when you start just perpetuating these falsehoods, it's very damaging to public psyche, but it's also enormously dangerous to the individual involved. In this one case, Dr. Amin, unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. MSNBC should be absolutely appalled. We can compare and contrast this with Smartmatic because, look, you don't want to say anything unfair about anyone, but here they are with this, nurse who doesn't seem to quite have all her facts lined up, and they're running with her comments, and they put her on, and they say they got this big whistleblower. At least in the case of Fox with Smartmatic, you can kind of understand. Heck, you had the president's own lawyers, right? The president of the United States lawyers saying things, so it's a little bit different. We're going to get to that in a second. But first, we're fully independent here on the Trish Regan Show, and we love being independent. You know what? I got to tell you, life is good on the other side. I tell everyone that leaves networks, trust me, it's the right thing. It's the right thing for you. The other thing that I tell you, and I've told you for quite some time, is to think about yourself. Put yourself first. To think about how you sleep best at night. For me, part of that is investing in gold. One of our sponsors here on the Trish Regan Show, American Heart for Gold. You can find out more, including how you may get up to $15,000 with special offers there. Up to $15,000 in free silver. And of course, silver has been moving right along with gold lately. Gold trading down just a touch. I actually added to my position today because it's one of those things that, you just want to make sure you have in the case of Armageddon. Hopefully we're not getting towards any Armageddon, but even if you think everything's just fine and everything's going to move along, all these countries out there, their central banks are also getting nervous. So what are they doing? They're buying gold. It's one of the reasons why gold has appreciated to more than $3,200 an ounce. I think I was telling you when I started this show, buy it when it was like at $1,400, $1,500. Anyway, I was right. Not that I always have to be right, but generally I am on these things. So go check them out. TrishLovesGold.com. Text Trish to get 65532 to learn more about how to get up to $15,000 in free silver, or call them at 1-844-495-1115.